Hi, chess masters. Coach Sipho here, and today we are going to deal with the middle game stage. We are going to help those players who feel clueless and hopeless in the middle game stage. Most players feel like the opening game stage and the end game stage are easier to play. They are straightforward. For example, most players know that in the opening game stage, you just need to accomplish four tasks, and those tasks are: develop your minor pieces, control the center, do castling, and connect your rooks. It doesn't matter what is the name of the opening, you just need to accomplish those four tasks. And the end games are also straightforward. All you have to do is to study how to checkmate, for example, with two rooks, how to checkmate with a single rook and the king, how to checkmate with the king and the queen, how to win the king and the pawn end games. And you also know that in most cases, the end games are mostly focused on pushing your pawns to the end of the board so that you can get the bigger piece, like a queen, so that you can be able to checkmate with the queen and the king, or with the rook and the king. Okay? But what is the plan in the middle game stage? It is not as straightforward as in the opening game stage and the middle game stage. But I promise you, chess masters, by the end of this video, you will know exactly what to do in the middle game stage. And you will also start feeling confident when you get to the middle game stage. I am sure you've heard that in the middle game stage, the plan is to attack. But what do you really attack? There are three things you can attack in the middle game stage. And to be honest, most players only know one, and that is to attack the opponent's king. Attacking the opponent's king is only one of the options. You also have two other options. And if you don't know them, what will you do in situations where you cannot really attack the opponent's king? Because not in all positions you will be able to attack the opponent's king. So today you are going to learn these three plans and you will start to feel more confident. Now, without any more delays, let's dive into it. Okay, as I've already mentioned, guys, the plans in the middle game is not only to attack the opponent's king, but you also have two more plans. What are these two other plans? You can also attack weak pawns. That is the second plan. And another plan is that you can occupy weak squares. Of course, we won't be able to deal with all these three types of weaknesses in one video. Otherwise, it will be a very long video. So today we are going to focus on attacking weak pawns. Then on other coming videos, we are going to learn how to attack the weak king, and then we are going to learn how to use weak squares. So today, let's focus on pawns. And if you don't want to miss those upcoming videos which will deal with how to attack the king and weak squares, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you will be notified when we upload that video. Now let's deal with weak pawns. There are three types of weak pawns. We have a backward pawn. A backward pawn is a pawn that is left behind by its bodies. Okay, as you can see that these two pawns are close to each other, but that one is left behind. It's difficult for the opponent to attack that one because it is defended by the pawn, but it's easier to attack that one because there is no pawn that is defending it. And if you defend that pawn with bigger pieces like knights and bishops, your pieces will become passive and you won't be able to use them to attack. So that is the first weakness, a backward pawn. Another weakness is an isolated pawn. An isolated pawn is a pawn that has no pawns on the right, there are no pawns on the left. It is just isolated. It is left alone. That is an isolated pawn. This is a backward pawn. And the third type of pawn weakness is a double isolated pawn. Double isolated pawns are weak because even though they are together, they cannot protect each other. For example, if this one was here and you were to attack it, it would just step forward and it would be defended by these 2 pawns. But when they are like this, they cannot be defended by other pawns and it's easier to win them. Now, when you play a real game, you are unlikely to be gifted these 3 weaknesses, all of them in one game. Usually you will be gifted only one weakness. It may be a backward pawn or an isolated pawn or double isolated pawn. Okay? Yeah. So once the opponent has one of them, you need to attack them. How do you really attack them? Okay? Let's demonstrate. When the opponent has one of them, for example, the opponent has an isolated pawn here. This is an isolated pawn because there is no pawn on the right, there is no pawn on the left. It is isolated. And these 3 weaknesses I've just mentioned, guys, they become more of weaknesses when they are on an open file. Because if this pawn was not on an open file, let's say there was a pawn here, it is not much of a weakness if it is not on an open file. But once they are on an open file, you can pile up on them. Okay? So what is the process? What is the method of attacking these weak pawns? Okay? You need to exchange all minor pieces, because if there are minor pieces on the board, then your opponent might have a dynamic compensation. For example, this knight might come to the center. You can't do anything to it because it is protected by this pawn, and your opponent might attack you. Okay? So the first step is to exchange all minor pieces. Now that pawn is just useless because it is not supporting any minor pieces. There are no minor pieces that it will be protecting. It is just useless and weak. So step number 1, exchange all minor pieces. Step number 2, make sure you don't exchange your queen, because if you could exchange queens, then it's easier for the opponent to bring the king and defend the pawn one more time, so that the rook can come out and start attacking. So make sure you don't exchange queens, because you want to prevent that king from coming and defending that pawn. So don't exchange the queens. Step number 3, make sure that you fix that weakness. Okay? It is easier to hit a stationary target than to hit a target that is moving. For example, if you could attack, you are already attacking that pawn once, it is defended once. Now most players would play queen to f3 here, and the opponent might play queen to c5. Now there are 2 attackers and there are also 2 defenders. Now anytime the opponent can push the pawn and try to exchange it for this one, and the opponent won't have that isolated pawn anymore. Okay? So make sure that before you attack a weakness, it cannot move. It is easier to hit a stationary target compared to hitting a moving object. So blockade that pawn so that it won't move anymore. It doesn't matter what the opponent does. Let's say the opponent plays this move, protecting this pawn one more time, and then you can protect this pawn. Sorry, you can attack that pawn one more time. Now you have 2 attackers. The opponent has 2 defenders. But now at some point, I don't know what black will do. Let's say black plays to that move to prevent back rank checkmate. In this case, you can play pawn to c4, and then now you will be able to finally win that pawn, because after c4, the opponent won't be able to take the pawn since the pawn is pinned. Black is going to lose a rook if they take that pawn. Even if you take with a queen, then you can always take that queen, and if they take, you are going to win that rook. Okay? So when the opponent has one of these weaknesses, just remember to exchange all the minor pieces. Make sure to never exchange the queens. 3, make sure to fix the weakness so that it won't move. And then after that, you can pile up on that weakness. Okay? Even if you are unable to win the pawn, in most cases, the opponent's pieces will be passive and they will focus on nesting this pawn. In contrary, your pieces are too active, and then at any moment they can change direction and start attacking the black king. Okay, and that is called the principle of two weaknesses. You will create another weakness this side. You will start pushing pawns, make that king weak, and at any moment you can move your pieces so that you attack the black king, and it will be easier for your pieces to move because they are more active than the opponent's pieces. Now, this does not only apply to an isolated pawn, it also applies to a backward pawn. It also applies to the double isolated pawns. It's the same method. Always exchange minor pieces when the opponent has one of these weaknesses. Exchange minor pieces. Make sure you don't exchange the queen. Fix the weakness before you attack it so that that weakness won't go forward, won't duck when you try to shoot it. So thank you for watching this week's video, and as I always ask you guys, don't forget to support the channel by smashing that subscribe button and click thumbs up so that the video could be shared with more and more chess players. Until next week, peace.